Is the matchmaker responsible for Overwatch's decline in popularity? Can we even go as far as to claim that its faults are the reason for what some like to call the death of the game? I think that most of us can agree to the notion that the answer is a bit more complicated than that. Just the way that we are all aware that people play the game for very different reasons, I think we can also agree that there cannot be one single reason explaining away why the game feels so dead. And sure, we talked about why it feels like everyone is leaving Overwatch in a video I made last month, but something a lot of you guys told me was that, well, you guys told me a lot of different things, but one reason that kept popping up over and over again was the matchmaker. That and faulty balance. And it is my belief that both of these things are inherently linked. What I'm trying to say is that I don't think that the matchmaker is as bad as people make it out to be. What I am saying instead is that it is working with what it is given. Now, it is worth mentioning that I will not claim any of these things as fact. It is merely supposed to be some food for thought, because I know that when we play the game and something pisses us off, we like to throw the blame around at everything we can get our hands on. I've been doing the same thing. But once you calm down and think twice about it, you might come to the realization that a lot of these things just don't make any sense. Specifically, the idea that players have of what is supposed to be a proper matchmaker just is not realistic to any capacity. I've said it before and I will say it again. Nothing as complicated as a matchmaking system can be fixed by a one-liner. Yelling at the devs to fix matchmaking does not do anything helpful for anyone. And the reason that most of these players don't go deeper than that is because they don't know what is broken. In an ideal world, every match we play consists of players who can form a cohesive composition and are willing to cooperate. In that perfect scenario, things like one-tricks and healer or DPS stacks would not exist, because those are the things that put a dent into the perceived match balance from the very beginning. That's to say that upon looking at your teammates, you can very well feel like the game is lost from the get-go because you got one too many DPS players who refuse to swap, or nobody knows how to play a tank properly. And that is where we blame the matchmaker. Why does the game give us so many DPS mains? Or why can I get a tank player just once in my life? And where that seems like a simple fix, it is a bit of a catch-22. Because what if the meta goes towards favoring triple DPS comps, and now you put the pressure on the players to either learn heroes outside their comfort zone, or just accept that they can't play what is widely perceived to be the currently strongest composition. And I know that many players would much rather play in guaranteed 2-2-2s rather than dealing with teams in which nobody wants to support. But you can see how, even if they did that, it's not like they would satisfy the entire player base by enforcing those kinds of matchmaking settings. Not to mention the complications that come with the introduction of such a rule set. How do you enforce it? If it's not hard locked, then how do you punish players who don't stick to the rules? How do you avoid this system getting abused via false reports? There are a lot of things to consider for something that, again, is not even what the player base in large wants to have in the game. Because if it was, chances are that they would have already implemented it. But that's the easy part. Oh wow, so not everyone is in favor of a role selection supported matchmaker, and there are a bunch of complications that come with it. Tell me something new. Well, there is also the perception that way too many players are in ranks that they don't belong in. And this is where the one-liners come back once again. Reset the MMR, some people say. Remove MMR entirely, others add to it. The idea that the MMR system is tossing a wrench into the matchmaker and by that ruining the balance of the game, I believe is completely overblown. If I, as an individual, have a bad game occasionally, then I know that this is an exception. Maybe I didn't have a proper warm-up, maybe I was distracted, or maybe I wasn't taking the game as seriously as I should have for a variety of reasons. But if we see somebody else underperforming, somebody who, mind you, we don't even know, then our first impulse is to call them boosted. And I wouldn't bring this up if I hadn't seen this happen time and time again. It is a type of behavior that is often reinforced by popular streamers as well, who don't necessarily realize how a thoughtless rant can affect their audience. Because at the end of the day, they might all just be saying what we, as players ourselves, think as well whenever we are in a situation like that. But where we might have caught ourselves being unreasonable once we calm down, we could now feel reinforced in our accusation being the right one. After all, a public figure has said the exact same thing. When I am angry, I might think to myself that a particular player in my team is the sole reason for my loss. But that does not mean that I don't don't realize that this is complete BS to some capacity. I'm just venting my anger off. But if I said that in the presence of somebody else and suddenly there's a back and forth between us about how we keep experiencing the same thing that aggravates us, then we might never come to that realization. Everyone has off matches and bad days. Sometimes we make bad decisions and learn from them, and other times we don't. But it is my belief that in our community in particular, there's way too much finger pointing going on. But I hear you, because there are more cases outside the specifications I just mentioned. What about somebody I came across over and over again and they keep underperforming? Obviously, I'm not going to deny that anomalies exist in any system out there, and that somebody could have potentially ended up in a rank that they don't deserve. But perhaps you and that player are just not compatible to some degree, whether that be from a hero composition or playstyle point of view. Because if that player is not dropping out of your SR range, then that must mean that they are winning matches where they are not paired up with you. And naturally, neither of us could confirm nor deny that because we are not present when that player participates in matches that we don't see. Bottom line is that most of these accusations that ultimately come down to faulty matchmaking or MMR distribution are made on the basis of very limited information. We are essentially seeing only one side of that coin, but we still attempt to extrapolate missing pieces based on what fits our own narrative. It's kinda like when players are allegedly collecting a lot of their competitive data and try to make overarching assumptions about the matchmaker based on that. Well, first off, your own matches are a drop in the bucket compared to the total amount of matches played by the entire player base. And any mistakes you make in your calculations or assumptions based on that will get scaled up exponentially. Having 2 out of 10 bad matches does not sound all that horrible, but that is still 20% of your matches played. If you scale it up to 1,000,000 matches, then you'll be dealing with a total of 200,000 bad matches, which obviously is a bit of a bigger deal. Not to mention that you are no longer dealing with an objective assessment because you are analyzing your own data. That means that you are much more likely to overlook or ignore things that could prove you wrong because you only care about what supports the narrative that you want to pursue. That's why all these personal anecdotes that are being used to expose the matchmaker are just that, anecdotes and assumptions. Is all of this trying to say that the matchmaker is functioning perfectly fine and we're all just overreacting, asking for something that is not feasible? No, of course not, because there are 2 things that I'm yet to cover. You might have caught yourself stalking other players' profiles and getting frustrated when you saw them rapidly rank up from one season to another on the back of a broken hero. Here's the thing, you can't really blame the matchmaker for that happening, because in that situation, they are playing a character that, objectively, is very powerful and very viable. They might not deserve the rank in your eyes because they don't play something that you consider skillful, and sure, they might drop back down once the character is nerfed, but here's the thing. Don't hate the player, hate the game. When somebody plays a character that is objectively overpowered but you insist on running your high skill alternative and end up losing, who is really the idiot? The person that maximized their chances to win, or the person that cries over something being broken whilst refusing to adapt? Sure, we can talk about how certain meta trends are annoying and how we hate playing hero XYZ over and over again because they're meta, but there is no matchmaking system that can account for that. This is an entirely balance-related problem that the matchmaker has to deal with, and it does the only thing it can do: adjust somebody's rank according to their performance. And if they are really good at winning games by playing something broken, then they are still winning games at the end of the day. That doesn't mean that you have to like it, that's just to say that you should blame the thing actually responsible for this happening, the balance change itself. I really think that players should get off of their high horses. How can you claim to be better than an off-meta one-trick when all you do is insisting to play heroes you like playing, disregarding their current viability in the meta? A Torbjorn main is not any worse than a Tracer main when both of these characters are currently not viable. The difference is that I don't see Torbjorn mains crying about the meta not being high skill enough. Okay, sorry, that was a bit of a personal tangent. I just really hate when people keep whining about so-called low-skill heroes being meta when they actively refuse to adapt to said meta. It's not all about your APM, it's also about making the right decisions, and I really feel like players should learn that. We also should not pretend that Overwatch has the worst matchmaker in the history of gaming. The things I see in this game are very reminiscent of things I see in other games, even in recent memory, including other team-based titles like Dirty Bomb and Rainbow Six Siege. The CSGO community, to my knowledge, even turned to third-party ladder systems because the thing they have in the base game just isn't cutting it for the top percentage of hyper-competitive players. What I believe makes Overwatch feel worse than those other games is that it is even more team-reliant, which decreases your carry potential in a match that takes place in your own elo. So if I don't believe that matchmaking is killing Overwatch, then what is? Well, besides the video I referenced earlier talking about all that, if I was forced to point fingers at one specific thing that I believe is having the biggest impact right now, then that will be the second thing I didn't mention up until now. Smurf accounts. I don't even think that there's a case to be had as to how Smurf accounts would not be damaging for a competitive ladder. Activision Blizzard obviously rather makes some extra money on the back of more game sales that fuel Smurf accounts than having a competitive ladder that is actually competitive. But hey, my opinion does not have to be yours. Are you also in the camp of players that say Overwatch is dying? Do you believe that the matchmaker is the culprit? Do you agree with me in saying that Smurf accounts are inherently unhealthy, or do you blame something else entirely? Feel free to sound off about that down in the comment section below. While you're down there, consider subscribing if you want to see more videos just like this one, and if you want to support my content directly with a YouTube membership for $4.99 a month, you can click the join button that you can find right next to the subscribe button. Thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you all next time. Alright, I want like the sickest one shot ever, okay?
Alright, where would you just lie on?
Okay, alright, just stack up. Dude, thank you so much.
Fuck! I forgot to check that!
That needs to be in the video though.
I played J-Crab.